الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، يقول الله عز وجل: فإن مع العسر يسرا إن مع العسر يسرا. So truly where there is hardship, there is also ease. Truly where there is hardship, there is also ease. And what's amazing about this verse in Surah Al-Sharh is that it was revealed in Mecca. This is not after the Islamic State had been established. This is not after the conquest of Mecca. This is not after people were coming into Islam in droves. This is not after the Prophet ﷺ had enough wealth to distribute to the Muslims. This was in the beginning. This was in a time where they were all hiding. They were praying in Bayt al-Arqam. And they had to hide their religion because of the persecution, the actual persecution that they were facing. It was during that time that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed these verses. And we have to wonder and we have to think, how much difficulty must he sallallahu alayhi wasallam had to have been facing? How much hardship and persecution were the companions facing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to inspire them? How low must their hearts have been, and how sad and upset must they have been that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said that this is the time now to reveal these verses and to inspire them and to give them hope. And even after planting this seed of hope, and after 2 migrations to Habasha, and after the death of his beloved wife Khadija, who not only was an emotional support for him, but was also a patron financial supporter of him, radiyallahu anha, and the support of his uncle, who is his main political supporter, and even on his death, and this verse had still not come to fruition. And sometimes we think, well, then the migration came. Then the Hijrah to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that was the next step. And if we look at that migration of him sallallahu alayhi wasallam from Mecca to Medina, even that was difficult. Some of the companions, if not many of them, they left with whatever belongings they could carry. It wasn't like they had time to prepare and to pack and to get all of their animals and camels ready and to close up their businesses. No, some of them, they had to leave the same night with whatever they could carry on their backs, and they left. Even that was not easy. So maybe after they arrived into Medina, it got easier. And even when we find in Medina, what happened? That they had to make deals with Aus and Khazraj. They had to deal with the other tribes in Khaybar. They had all of these different enemies that they were still making treaties with. They were still facing hardship, and it was a new type of hardship. And in that situation, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what did He do? He revealed the obligation of the salah. He revealed the obligation of the prayer. So their responsibilities grew, even though the hardship might not have been that much less. What does that teach us? And what lesson should we take from that? That yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might create openings of ease. But it's not necessary that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives an absolute ease and absolute rest. We might face issues and problems and difficulties one after another after another. And if we look at those individuals that face the most difficulty, and those individuals that face the most hardship, we will always find continuously and successively that it is the Anbiya alayhim salam, that it is the prophets and the messengers. And why is that? It's because those individuals are the ones who are the closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and this is why they receive the most tests. And it's time for us to reflect and introspect. How many of us have had rocks thrown at us because of how we're practicing or because we're praying? How many of us have been kicked out of our homes because we're trying to call the people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How many of us were physically abused, socially abandoned, financially taken advantage of, and many going bankrupt? And I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that most, maybe if not all of us, have not had to deal with that and face that. And if we haven't faced those difficulties, and if we haven't faced those hardships, this should allow us to be that much more successful. Because if when we look at hardship, and when we look at difficulties, and when we look at obstacles, sometimes we face them and we feel like we've stopped. Sometimes we look and we feel like it is this wall in front of us. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He promises us, لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. So yes, there is a wall in front of us, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will never place a wall in my path that I am unable to scale. He'll never place me in a situation that I cannot overcome. He will never put me in a hardship that I cannot conquer. And this is what we see in the Prophet of Allah, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and his companions. That yes, after these series of hardships and difficulties, series of persecutions and financial bankruptcy and social ostracization, that they still persevered and they still pushed forward. And some of them might have said that this ended, as Umar radiallahu anhu, he asked the companions during his khilafah, with a young Ibn Abbas sitting next to him, radiallahu anhum, saying, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِذَا جَاءَ نَصْرُ اللَّهِ وَالْفَتْحِ, He says, when Allah's victory and conquest comes, and you saw the people coming into Islam in droves, what does this mean? And they said, most of the companions, they said, this is Fatih Makkah. This is the conquest of Makkah. And he turned to Ibn Abbas, a young man, sitting amongst this crowd of elderly companions, wise, knowledgeable, and he says to him, Ya Ibn Abbas, what do you say? What do you think? And he turns to Umar, and he tells him that this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling His messenger that your mission is almost complete and you are close to leaving this world. So his understanding of Nasr, his understanding of victory, and his understanding of conquest was not these worldly conquests. It was not these worldly victories. It was not the fact that they were given status in political control and now even wealth in numbers. It was a successful death. And that successful death was the greatest tragedy that Ummah Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, mankind, it was the greatest tragedy that mankind faced. It was the loss of our beloved Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So yes, we will face difficulty. Yes, we will face hardship. And many of us might be facing hardship right now. I remember one of my colleagues, Saif, he got up after Salah and he asked the congregation, he said, turn to your left or turn to your right. And he said, ask that brother to make a dua for you. Just one. What dua would you request? Some brothers, they said, make dua for me, I've been diagnosed with cancer. Some brothers, they said, make dua for me, I just lost a child. Some said, make dua for me, I just lost a mother, or I have illness, I just lost my job, I've been evicted from my home. We don't know. We really don't. And every single one of us is facing a challenge. Every single one of us is facing a difficulty. But how are we responding to those difficulties? How are we responding to those challenges? Alhamdulillah, I think most people are patient. I really believe that. At least from this community, I don't see rioting. I don't see looting. I don't see taking advantage of others. I see a community that when we're faced with hardship, We pivot and we try to work harder. And that is the response, that is the prophetic response. That when we see a difficulty and we're faced with something, we become harder. We become more tempered. And it's amazing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He uses the word fitna. And if you look at what the word fitna actually means, it's to put something over fire, to purify it. Because when you go mining and you take out gold or you take out silver, you can't just turn it into jewelry. You can't just turn it into a watch. You have to temper it. You have to put it through fire. You have to purify it. And that's what those processes are for us. That these difficulties, maybe not being able to pay a bill, maybe getting sick, maybe losing a loved one, maybe getting into an accident, that is what tempers us. That is what makes us stronger, if we allow it to make us stronger. And depending on how we look at it and how we perceive it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us this compass. He's given us this guide. Are we using it to better ourselves, and to better others, and to better our community? I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it such, and to make us better Muslims, to make us better community members, and to make us better members of society. وَأَقُولُ قَوْلِي هَذَا وَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ لِسَائِرِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ مِنْ كُلِّ ذَنبٍ وَخَطِيئَةٍ إِنَّهُ هُوَ الْغَفُورُ الرَّحِيمُ. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء والمرسلين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد، يقول الله عز وجل: أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه متى نصر الله ألا إن نصر الله قريب. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in this beautiful verse, do you suppose that you will enter the garden without first having suffered like those before you? They were afflicted by misfortune and hardship, and they were so shaken that even their messenger and the believers with him cried, when will Allah's help arrive? Truly, Allah's help is near. This verse promises us, and this tells us that we will be tested. There's no doubt. If I want paradise, if I want Allah's Jannah, if I want Firdaus, then I will be tested. And if I don't want those things, then I won't be. But if I love Allah, and I love His Messenger, and I love the companions, and I love the Ummah to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam, then I will be tested. And it's not an easy path. And how do I know it's not easy? Allah says here, He tells us, right? حَتَّى يَقُولُ الرَّسُولُ. Even the messenger, he says, مَتَى نَصْرُ اللَّهِ. Even he is worried. His worry is different from the level of the worry of us. And it's a different type of worry. Because he knows the help is going to come. For him, it's a logistic issue. Is it going to come now, or is it going to come in a few minutes, or is it going to come in a day? But that worry is something that is important for us to keep in mind. That it is not a sign of the weakness of our iman. It's a natural worry and a natural anxiety that we get. But again, those feelings, they can stay feelings. How are we acting on them? What are we doing? The moment I find out that I lost my job, what is a good reaction? Yes, to be upset, but I'm going to turn here and I'm going to apply for 10 other jobs. If I'm having a problem with my son, or if I'm having a problem with my daughter, yes, I'll be upset. Let me find someone who can come and help intercede and talk to us about this. I get into an accident, I'll be upset about myself. Maybe I'm hurt, maybe my car got damaged, but I'm going to call the insurance company. I make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and thank Him for keeping me safe. We have to keep moving forward. That is the way of the Muslim. That yes, we feel sad and we feel upset, but we're always aiming and working toward drawing near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and near to His paradise. This is how we work, this is how we move, and this is the prophetic way. And sometimes someone might be like, well, what if I'm in a situation? What if I'm in a difficult situation? And the answer will be like the Prophet ﷺ, when he was being oppressed physically, socially, financially, like that. So what did he do? He left. He removed himself from that situation. And today, if I'm in a situation where I have the ability to leave and remove myself, then I am held accountable if I allow myself in that situation. Just like when the angels, they came and they asked, what was your situation? They said, كُنَّا مُسْتَضْعَفِينَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. That we were weak in this land. And how did they respond? أَلَمْ تَكُنْ أَرْضُ اللَّهِ وَاسِعَةً. Was Allah's land not wide and vast that you could have gone and migrated? I am not allowed to oppress others as a Muslim, nor do I allow others to oppress me. Why? Because the Muslim is someone in a being that is honored. The blood and the rights and the honor of a Muslim is sacred. I have to believe that for myself, and I have to believe that for my brothers and my sisters. And if I truly believe that, then I will stand up. And I will not allow others to take advantage of me. And if I'm in a situation where I have no choice, there's a solution for that too. I have to be patient, I have to make dua, and I have to keep doing good deeds. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us all honorable. May He make us all upright. May He make us all strong. I ask Allah Azza wa Jal to have mercy on all of those who have passed. I ask Him Azza wa Jal to give shifa and to give healing to all of those who are ill. I ask Him Azza wa Jal to help those who are in any type of financial difficulty out of that difficulty, and to help those who are in debt out of that debt. And I ask Him Azza wa Jal to gather us in His paradise like He has gathered us here today. وَأَقُولُ قَوْلِي هَذَا وَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ لِسَائِرِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ مِنْ كُلِّ ذَنبٍ وَخَطِيئَةٍ إِنَّهُ هو الغفور الرحيم وأقم الصلاة.